Hello, everyone. I wish you a good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Welcome to the spUN Virtual High School Debate Tournament for 2025 for the 7th of June. Judge Mohammed Badawi will be giving us feedback and announcing the winner at the end of the debate. Professor Mohammed Badawi is from Aleppo, Syria. For several years, Coach Badawi has served as a coach for both the high school and university NSS spUN debate program. He has also acted as an outstanding coach and judge for the program at both of the high school and university levels. Judge, please be sure to record your information in tabroom.com as soon as you are able after this debate, so that the teams can be advised of their next debate status. I'm the moderator and facilitator for this 2025 spUN Tournament Room, and my name is Skylar Martin, and Tamara Abrancini is assisting. I would like to read the following statement to you. The winning team is chosen based on their skill and effort, not on any preset NSS position. NSS clearly believes that humanity should continue to explore, develop, and settle space. However, NSS also believes that open and honest debate will facilitate that goal. It is important that space advocates understand and be able to express the anti-space case. No statement by any debater or coach is an official position of NSS. So let's meet our debaters. The affirmative position is held by Team Titanium. So titanium is a valuable metal found in some asteroids and is used in space due to its high strength to weight ratio, with excellent corrosion resistance and the ability to withstand extreme temperatures. These properties make it ideal for use in spacecraft construction, launching vehicles, and various space-related applications. The team is coached by Tammy Ruder, who is returning for her fourth year as a coach in the spUN debates. She has also been coaching Lincoln Douglas debate in Massachusetts, USA for 8 years and was a Lincoln Douglas debater herself. A huge fan of Galileo, Copernicus, Kepler, and Brahe, Tammy earned her bachelor's degree in history of science with a focus on the history of astronomy. Her degrees are from Harvard University. In her professional life, Tammy is a fundraising consultant providing guidance and training to assisting colleges, universities, and other nonprofits so that they can secure their financial resources to accomplish important societal missions. Team Titanium, please give us your name and the country that you are representing.
Hi, my name is Maria and I'm representing Romania.
Hi, my name is Charles and I'm representing the United States.
Hi, my name is Vivan and I'm representing India.
Hi, my name is Gauri and I'm representing India.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Team Chromium. Chromium's hardness and wear resistance and ability to protect against corrosion make it valuable for coating components used in space exploration, like in space hardware. Additionally, chromium's natural lubricity and heat resistance are crucial for reliable performance in harsh space environments. The team is coached by Coach Thomas Maple. Coach Maple is a professor at Santa Fe College and holds a Master's of Sciences degree in International and Intercultural Communication. Professor Maple is the Santa Fe College speech coordinator. He has been with the spUN program for 2 years and resides in Florida, USA. Team Chromium, please give us your name and the country that you are representing.
I'm Alexandra and I'm representing Romania.
My name is Paul and I'm representing Canada.
Thank you. So if anyone has any questions at all, please raise your hand in your participation icon on your screen. Please mute your mic unless you are speaking, and only the presenting team and judge should turn on their videos unless directed by the moderator. Our debating format today follows the same format as in the practice tournament. So let's finally get started. The 2025 spUN High School resolution is: an international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. We'll hear from the first speaker from Team Titanium, representing the affirmative position. Team Titanium, your first speaker may begin your affirmative intro. You have been allotted for 4 minutes. You may begin.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, esteemed jury and fellow debaters. My name is Maria, and I'll be the first affirmative speaker. We, Team Titanium, affirm the resolution an international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. I would like to begin by defining key words for this debate. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, an international body is defined as an institution drawing membership from at least 3 states, having activities in several states, and whose members are held together by a formal agreement. In addition, the NSS rulebook for these debates completes the definition. This body would have the authority and legitimacy to create and enforce rules, guidelines, and standards related to the extraction and use of resources found in space. The Space Generation Advisory Council defines space minerals as natural resources to be found in the Moon, other planets, and near-Earth asteroids. Utilization is defined by the Cambridge Dictionary as the act of using something in an effective way. A key supporting our claim is should. It doesn't mean that it is easily accomplished or possible, but rather what ought to be done. We are debating today as part of the spUN debate, which focuses on human activity in space and the value of universalization. As a reminder, universalization describes the next phase of human development, embracing implanted relations and much more aggressive exploitation of opportunities that lie beyond the confines of Earth. Universalization implies a transition from nation-states to a single worldview of humanity, where all individuals are treated fairly without regard to the nation of origin, race, sexual orientation, mental or physical ability. I am pleased to offer an overview of the 3 arguments my teammates and I will be making in support of the resolution. We will show that an international body is best for establishing a framework for the utilization of space minerals because it ensures equity, maximizes safety and security, and grants equal access for all. An international body is the one solution that ensures equity. Equity implies answering the direct needs of someone in a fair and impartial manner, without regard to their social background. Therefore, ensuring equity is the only way to achieve universalization, and an international body is the sole provider of that opportunity. Private companies often have biased requirements for employment, denying equity. According to SpaceX's own website, only US citizens can apply for job opportunities and internships. We propose an international body with the overall guidance principle of universalization. Therefore, it is going to be different from what such bodies currently tend to be, but similar to the milestones they achieve. Our international body would not only offer access to this decision-making for all members without an equitable mechanism such as veto votes or contribution votes, as a seat at the table grants a fair start, but also offer help for the nations in need. The first globally ratified agreement, the Montreal Protocol, shows how developing countries are equal partners in resolving global crises if they are helped. By implementing the Multilateral Fund, financial assistance of $5.1 billion has been provided for 147 developing countries for capacity building and pollution control. This has helped achieve the goal of phasing out many ozone-depleting substances by 99%. As a result, a global development fund is essential within an international body to support capacity building and technology transfer in non-spacefaring countries, while also ensuring environmental control. Adding patent sharing requirements would only strengthen this. For example, the World Intellectual Property Organization Free Technology Exchange Platform listed over 130,000 technologies in 2024. The World Health Organization demonstrates how international bodies can equitably allocate resources by using standard indicators to identify who needs support. For example, funding directed towards countries with low life expectancy led to increases up to 20 years in the countries who receive support. Similarly, the ISA sets standards that have to be met within specific timeframes in order to continue having access to the mining sites and also prevents monopolies. Therefore, equity of resources and thus universalization can only be achieved by an international body with fair voting, a support fund, and standards for proper allocation. Only an international system is equipped to foster communication and proper resource allocation at the scale of the universe, and we expect this framework to be both in space and on Earth. And for these reasons, Team Titanium affirms the resolution. My teammates look forward to providing you with more evidence in support of these arguments as the round continues. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. All right then. We begin a 3-minute prep time for the negative team to prepare a cross-X. If the negative team is ready to move on before the 3 minutes have elapsed, please indicate it to me and then we will proceed. But for now, we'll pause for a 3-minute prep time.
I am prepared for the cross-ex, so that's all right.
Perfect.
Okay. Please tell me when I can start.
I will let you know now. Just arranging the time. Okay. Speaker of -1 of Team Chromium. Please begin your 2-minute cross-ex of affirmative 1.
My first question is, how exactly would you enforce this framework, and how would you make sure that everybody signs it and everybody agrees to it?
Thank you so much for your question. Well, first of all, the resolution implies should, which means what has to be done. And also the definition given by the NSS said that this body has the authority and legitimacy and it has enforced power. Also, if we talk about how can we make countries all obey this law, this question has been answered by Harold Honger Koch in his 97 article, Why Do Nations Obey International Law? And it's not because of sanctions, because they are persuaded by treaty regimes to confirm their legitimacy. They have more obligation, diplomatic reputation. They want to escape conflict and for fairness. And we also debate in the name of universalization. So this is the right thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Now my next question. How exactly would you make sure that a dominating spacefaring nation wouldn't control this international body? How would you make sure that it would not be corrupt?
Thank you so much. Well, as I said, the overall guidance principle for this international body is universalization. And as we stated before, we don't have unequitable voting mechanisms like the UN. We have fair votes, no contribution votes, and we also have a fund. So we are going to help developing countries because we give them capacity building. So if universalization is the guidance principle, fairness is a principle as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, you said something about equitable sharing, but is it fair that a country that invested a lot of money and technology into mining space, is it fair to share those resources with a country that has barely done anything to mine the space?
Thank you for your question. Well, we're not imposing the fact that a country has to share its own resources, but if more countries mine more resources, a part of those resources is going to be allotted to the developing countries. So therefore, the benefits will be for everyone because universalization implies international cooperation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both for your cross-ex. We'll now begin with the opening argument from speaker -1 from Team Chromium. You will also be allotted 4 minutes. You may begin.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Fekete, and I will be the first and second negative speaker. Today, Team Chromium stands against the following resolution. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce my team and outline our roles in today's debate. I will explain why international bodies are too slow and ineffective regulating space, why real progress comes from national and private information, and the rest of our arguments. Finally, Paul will deliver a rebuttal and we'll conclude with a summary of our case. Now, before we get into technicalities, let's start with a brief story, because sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths. In 2006, a private company named SpaceX launched its first rocket. It failed, so did the second and the third. But on the fourth try in 2008, the Falcon 1 succeeded, making history as the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach space. That launch wasn't backed by international committees or protected by regulations. It was driven by courage, the kind that takes risks and pushes boundaries. And that's exactly what space demands. Progress comes from bold steps into the unknown, not from playing it safe. This wasn't just a breakthrough, it marked the shift to a new era led by private ambition and innovation. Today, we stand against the resolution not because we shouldn't regulate space, but rather because we must regulate it better, smarter, and more realistically. Let me show you how we can do this. By trusting innovation, enabling responsibility, respecting the true nature of space, and embracing universalization, the inclusion of all actors under flexible, transparent, widely accepted practices, rather than rigid rules imposed from above. Firstly, international bodies are ineffective at managing space regulation. Even though they have noble intentions, when it comes to space, intentions are not enough. They lack enforcement tools, decision-making speed, and technological foresight. The Outer Space Treaty, signed over 50 years ago, is still the backbone of space law, but it offers no real enforcement. No fines, no courts, no penalties. Attempts to update it, like the 1979 Moon Agreement, failed. No major space-faring nation signed it. And bodies like the UN COPUOS operate by consensus, meaning any single country can block progress. That's not governance, that's gridlock. In 2021, Russia destroyed one of its own satellites, creating 1,500 debris fragments. The global response outrage, but no penalty. No authority could act. In short, no international regulation is lagging far behind reality. Secondly, nation and private innovation are the real drivers of space progress. From SpaceX to Blue Origin, meaningful advancements are being made by actors who are fast, flexible, and willing to take risks. Not by global committees waiting for consensus. Startups like Astroforge, TransAstra, and Carbon Plus are leading the charge. Carbon Plus recently raised $20 million and plans a 2027 mission to extract resources in space for use in space, a crucial step toward a $1.8 trillion space economy. Astroforge launched a $6.5 million spacecraft toward asteroid 2022 OB5 this year. Despite technical issues, the mission is a learning step. TransAstra is developing optical mining system and inflatable space station for fuel processing, critical infrastructure for in-situ resource utilization. International law hasn't even caught up, and yet the mining has already begun. Private actors are doing what governments couldn't manage in decades and doing it cheaper, faster, and smarter. The environmental impact matters too. Mining 1 kilogram of platinum on Earth emits 40,000 kilograms of CO2 from an asteroid, just 150 kilograms. According to a 2018 study, that's not innovation, that's planetary stewardship. In conclusion, what do we really need? We do not need tighter control. We need smarter coordination. A universal approach should unite all players under shared goals while respecting their autonomy and innovation. Space isn't just the next frontier. It's a test of how boldly and wisely we shape the future. All solutions won't get us there. It's time to launch with new ones that balance opportunity and accountability for all. Thank you very much. Moderator, I think you are on mute, if I am correct. I cannot hear you.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, affirmative 1 from Titanium. Please start with your cross X of -1. You are allotted 2 minutes. You may begin.
Well, you mentioned how SpaceX fuels innovation, but are you aware of the fact that NASA is the one who is giving money to SpaceX, is government funded?
Well, even though it is government funded, it shows that private companies can also make a step towards innovation. So yeah, also there's not just SpaceX. You have
And I'm sorry if I could come with the next question. Do you think it would be safer and more sustainable without regulation?
What I want to say is that we do not believe there shouldn't be regulation. What we are saying is that international regulation, international framework is not the best way to do it.
And what is the best way to do it?
National laws, because national laws are more flexible.
And my only question is, how can you enforce national laws on such an international domain such as space? Because space doesn't belong to a country in particular.
Well, even though space doesn't belong to a country, first of all, we must talk about the fact that international enforcement, it's not actually realistical. So even though the affirmative is saying that international frameworks are way better and smarter and so on and so forth, why are we talking about this if they're simply not enforceable? You cannot do this while nation laws can be enforced way easier.
And how can you enforce if we have two national laws which are conflicting? How can you make sure which one is right? If two countries want to mine in the same space and both of their national laws allow them to, how does that work?
Well, that will be indeed a problem, but we have to trust that the countries will resolve our conflicts, even though, yeah, there might be conflict indeed, but the thing is, an framework would be even more problematic if they do not want to sign it to follow. Thank you.
Thank you for your cross-X. I believe my mic is on this time. Affirmative 2 of Titanium now offers a second argument for the affirmative team. You have been allotted 4 minutes. Your time begins now.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, esteemed judges and fellow debaters. My name is Charles Bales, affirmative 2 speaker for Team Titanium, and I am pleased to present 2 arguments to affirm the resolution. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. First is the importance of safety in space mining, and secondly is establishing an international body to implement a framework for the utilization of space minerals will ensure equal access for everyone. First, I would like to discuss the importance of safety in space mining. Professor Jaku and the IAASS's executive board member, Pelton's 2016 article, states that the current policy in place is that if two or more states jointly undertake space mining activities, each state will be expected to adopt and impose their own space mining safety standards. This is a clear issue because if these differences go unregulated by an international body, accidents can occur due to conflicting national safety standards, which could imply damage to property, Earth and space environment damage, and most importantly, death and injury of humans. Humans are the keystone and cornerstone of all efforts in space, and it is imperative that they are protected. Without regulation, they can't be protected nearly as efficiently. The best way to ensure this strong uniform standard that provides safety is to have an international body construct a framework for these laws, which ensures enforcement. In addition, the United Nations has warned that without strict policies in place, space resources could even be weaponized, which would lead to militarization and conflicts beyond Earth. This would directly contradict universalization by increasing division between nations, whereas an international body would strengthen universalization. In November 2021, according to the 76th section of the UN General Assembly, delegates approved 5 draft resolutions in favor of non-weaponization of outer space by a recorded vote of 163 in favor to only 8 against. Human life is the irreplaceable nucleus of space development. Therefore, safety and regulated safety is crucial for ensuring universalization. Secondly, establishing an international body in order to implement a framework for the utilization of space minerals will ensure equal access for everyone. According to the Chicago Journal of International Law, written by DePagter in 2021, many countries like the US and Japan are already granting their citizens private property rights over space resources. This directly goes against the Outer Space Treaty, which explicitly prohibits any national rights over space and allows for an imbalanced international licensing regime, where only the most powerful countries who have already put their will on the other developing countries are the only ones that are capable of expanding into space. Just because the Outer Space Treaty has not had regulation on it yet does not mean that regulation should be enforced and regulation can't be enforced. It just means that stronger, more universalized laws are needed and should be used, which is what this debate is about. Clearly, denying all but the most powerful countries access to space resources is the opposite of universalizing strategy, whereas an international body would be universalizing. Ensuring that all countries have access to a slice of the pie is no issue for an international body and framework, however. According to the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs in 2020, their UN Spider program ensures that every nation has access to space-based information for disaster management and emergency response. This program has already greatly expedited technical support during emergencies, a clear contributor to the proof that international bodies have had success in the past and will continue to have success universalizing. Depriving less powerful countries of the benefit of the benevolent influence of an international body goes directly against the principles of universalization. As a final note, the massive scale of the universe is an undeniable argument for having an international body regulate the utilization of space minerals. National laws cannot regulate over such a universalized entity as space. Only international cooperation and universalizing between developed and developed countries will be able to ensure everyone the equal access and equity that they deserve. Advocating for remaining in an older system like national laws does not achieve universalization as effectively as an international body. For these reasons, Team Titanium strongly urges you to join us in affirming the resolution. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Let's now hear from -2 from Team Chromium in a 2-minute cross-examination. Team Chromium, you may begin.
My first question is, what exactly would you do if a country wouldn't respect your framework? What exactly would you do in that moment?
We can place regulations and use the power that the international body has from the developing and developed countries to
But
force this country into being
what
respectful.
power does an international body have? What's exactly its power? Because to me, it feels powerless. What can it do?
Oh, thank you for that question. A national body, international body, has the power to create universalizing laws, like we already discussed, with an international body based on universalization. It would be able to place regulations and trade restrictions on other countries in order to shape their economies and their access to space. It can also place laws on them, ensuring human rights, sustainability, safety, and many other universalizing principles.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but how do you make sure that conflict doesn't arise if countries do not want to respect your framework? How do you make sure that there won't be conflict just because of that framework?
This debate is based on what should happen, and a framework will effectively reduce the amount of conflict by reducing the actual ties that nations have against each other. With national laws, they could create laws that directly conflict with each other and cause the conflict you're discussing. Whereas with one universal set of laws based on an international body, we can stop these nations from conflicting by ensuring they adhere to the same laws that don't conflict with each other.
Yeah, but if they do not want to follow those rules, there will inevitably be conflict. Is it right?
Again, this debate is based on what should happen. So what should happen is that all nations will be able to collectivize and follow these same laws. This can easily be enforced by an international body, which is still universalizing over the power of space. And it should have the capability to make everyone join. The best case scenario is that everyone joins, and we can always place regulations that make countries want to join.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's now hear from -2 from Team Chromium with your second argument. You are allotted 4 minutes and you may begin.
Today, Team Chromium stands in firm negation of the resolution. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. Our stance is clear. Such a framework could do more harm than good, not only innovation, national sovereignty, but to the broader goal of universalization. By universalization, we refer to making space accessible, beneficial, and available to as many actors as possible, especially emerging ones. Imposing a restrictive, top-down international framework risks freezing space development in bureaucracy, power imbalance, and inefficiency. We offer 3 key reasons why. First, international frameworks are historically ineffective and often fail to deliver results. Let's look at the track record. Treaties governing space often suffer from vague terminology. Terms like peaceful use remain undefined, and to this day, we haven't agreed where Earth's atmosphere ends and when outer space begins. Even more telling are the failures of international regulation in other resource sectors. The International Labour Organization Convention, for example, sought to eliminate child labor in mining. Yet, child labor remains rampant in global mining hubs. These kinds of frameworks tend to fall short because they rely on idealistic cooperation rather than enforceable realistic mechanisms. In space, we can afford to replicate that failure. The challenges of enforcement and lack of clarity make international regulation a weak, blunt instrument. Secondly, a binding international framework would be practically unenforceable and strategically naive. Here's a hard truth. International frameworks only apply to countries that agree to them. If a country finds that a regulation could harm its strategic or economic interests, it simply won't sign. We've seen this with terrestrial mining. There's no comprehensive global mining treaty because countries like Australia, with strong mining sectors, wouldn't accept external restrictions. Now apply this to space. Countries like the US, Russia, China, and India are heavily invested into the space industry. Expecting them to voluntarily reduce their autonomy and control over their space programs is like asking them to give up control of their national defense sectors. It's unrealistically. Even if such a treaty was signed, they'd likely see a split system. Powerful nation ignoring the framework while emerging ones are bound by it, resulting in an unbalanced, hypocritical playing field that stilifies the very universalization the proposition claims to promote. Third, innovation in space is not driven by international bureaucracy, it's driven by private enterprise. Since the Cold War ended, government programs have taken a backseat and private players have stepped up. The US hasn't returned to the moon since 1972, despite being the global space pioneer. Instead, private companies like SpaceX have revolutionized the industry with reusable rockets and lowered launch costs dramatically. While governments still invest in space, their share is shrinking. Venture capital and private investment are now primarily drivers of progress. Imposing international frameworks could deter this innovation. Regulations designed for consensus often limit risk-taking. And in space, risk is where the breakthroughs happen. By allowing flexible national or private systems, we enable competition, innovation, and faster progress. And let me briefly address reinforcement. A regulatory framework assumes countries and companies will report data honestly. That's not how the world works. China has withheld key demographic data since COVID. Countries distort numbers to boost investment or avoid scrutiny. How can we expect honest, transparent reporting for something as high stakes as space mining? Auditing compliance would be a logistical nightmare. especially across dozens of nations and hundreds of private actors. The case of nuclear disarmament proves this. Despite treaties and expectations, there are still 12,000 nuclear warheads globally. In short, an international framework would not be credible, enforceable, or fair. Space is too important, too strategically valuable, too innovation-dependent, and too complex for collapsing international frameworks. Let nations and private actors take the lead. Encourage cooperation, yes, but don't freeze progress with one-size-fits-all regulation. We urge a clear vote for the negation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Please could Team Titanium please start your 2 minutes of cross X to negative Team Chromium. Negative speaker 2, you may begin. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So you talk about how nuclear warheads are still prevalent in the world today. However, after signing this agreement that you mentioned, nuclear armament count has been reduced by 70%. You say that international frameworks aren't effective. How do you prove that this still does not have an effect?
Well, first of all, yes, perhaps 70% has been improved by 70%, but there still are countries who are keeping nuclear weapons to themselves and not sharing their information about this topic with
Thank you.
anyone.
So you agree that 70%, the vast majority of nuclear warheads have been reduced by an international body?
Well,
Yes or
even
no
though
answer?
you said that 70%, well, in my research, I have not found this percentage. So, yeah. I can.
Another point of international frameworks being strong, how do you propose that the Montreal Protocol, which phased out ozone depleting substances by 99%, how can you still say that international frameworks do not have an effect?
Well, those are some situations, but we cannot say. First of all, let's talk about the fact
So you
that,
think the best case scenario, is that the international bodies have this massive effect?
yeah, but this best
Yes,
case
okay, thank you. So
not.
what should happen is that these frameworks are implemented because they have the capability and the capacity to have this massive effect.
Well, they do not have this massive effect. That's the
But you
thing.
just said they do have the capability to have this massive
I
effect.
said the fact that we're talking about Earth. It's completely different than space. So thinking that is the same thing and that the rules that perhaps have worked on Earth would work in space is naive.
So if you say that things would be easier for nations in space, how do you propose that the developing countries who don't already have a foothold in space manage to get up to the same level as the developed countries that are already there? Whatever.
Well, the truth is that there always have been power imbalances in the world, and I'm afraid an international framework would not solve that, not just like that overnight. I'm sorry, I'm afraid the time up? Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's correct. I was just waiting for your response. Everyone got what they needed. Thank you very much for that great cross X. We will begin a 2 minute prep time for both teams to prepare for their rebuttals. I will start the timer now for the 2 minutes. Okay, the 2-minute prep time is up. Can -3 from Team Chromium please give your rebuttal? You've been allotted for 4 minutes. Your time starts now when you're
Okay,
ready.
so the affirmative team argues that an international body is the only path to equity, safety, and universal access in space mining, even suggesting that resources mined by major players should be directly given to other countries. Let's be realistic. Space is fundamentally different, and a rigid, centralized international authority is not the right answer. First, on like equity and access for all, and this notion of directly sharing mining resources, while the goal of global benefit is noble, this proposal fundamentally misunderstands the colossal economic realities of space mining. Who would undertake the billions of dollars in investment, the decades-long research and developing time, and the immense risk required to extract minerals from an asteroid or from the moon if they knew that a portion of their hard-earned uh, returns would simply be given away to nations that haven't done anything? This isn't about hoarding, it's about enabling. If you remove the primary economic incentive, the return of an extraordinary risky investment, you simply ensure that the development of mining in space is never fully explored. The true universalization of space research will not come down from forced redistribution, but from an industry's very existence, driving down the cost of critical materials on Earth and spurring technological advancements while also creating new jobs globally. And my opponent also mentioned SpaceX, noting that only US citizens can apply for jobs, but this is just a standard business practice, especially for like high clearance jobs, and it's not a failure of national law. It doesn't negate the wider benefits created by such industry growth. Also, the comparison to Earth-based successes like the Montreal Protocol or financial assistance programs is a false analogy. These dealt with existing, well-understood problems on a shared planet, and space mining is a new industry requiring immense investment and risk. An international body imposing a one-size-fits-all rules like from the outset risk paralyzing innovation and scaring off the private capital needed to make space mining a reality. We need flexible, adaptive national laws and voluntary, transparent cooperation, not a new layer of bureaucracy that will only slow us down. This approach will maximize safety, foster true innovation, and ultimately ensure that the vast potential space mining benefits all of humanity. Moving on, safety in space mining won't be guaranteed by a framework alone. The International Seabed Authority, the ocean's equivalent for regulating deep sea mining, has faced criticisms for weak enforcement and transparency issues. So if such a body struggled to regulate Earth's oceans despite decades of experience, why should we assume that a similar body would be effective in a more complex domain of space where it's much easier to get away with it? The idea of an equitable international licensing regime ignores the current power dynamics. Over 80% of all active satellites are controlled by a handful of countries, mostly countries like the US, China, and Russia. So any centralized framework is likely to reflect these imbalances, giving disproportionate influence to the same spacefaring powers. Also, national law can work. The US, Luxembourg, and UAE have all passed legislation granting rights to space resources, and these laws have encouraged private sector investments, with companies like SpaceX and Asteroid Mining Corporation actively pursuing innovation under national regulation. Lastly, while it's true that national laws may conflict, this isn't unique to space. We already manage overlapping jurisdictions in global trade, aviation, and maritime law through negotiated treaties and mutual agreements, not rigid international control. In short, a centralized space framework may sound ideal, but in practice, is risk being ineffective, inequitable, and restrictive. National innovation, supported by adaptive treaties, is the more realistic and productive path forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, -3. Affirmative 3 of Team Titanium, please give your 4-minute rebuttal. You have as well been allotted 4 minutes and start whenever you're ready.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. A very good morning, afternoon, and evening to the judge, moderator, and my fellow debaters. I am Ivan from Team Titanium, and I stand in strong affirmation of today's resolution. First of all, -1 and -3 use SpaceX as an example of innovation led by a private body. However, they forgot that $13 billion in taxpayer funds were granted to SpaceX by NASA, a framework-led corporation. SpaceX isn't leading the industry on its own, it's just riding on government-backed funding. Furthermore, -1 and -2 mention that international frameworks are unfair and favor the powerful, but themselves they have failed to address how a lack of a framework would prevent monopolization, weaponization, and even exploitation. They simply haven't spoken about universalization at all. And just because laws aren't always followed doesn't mean that we throw them out. Murder and theft are illegal everywhere, yet they still happen. Do we make them legal just because some people break them? Of course not. We keep laws because they set standards and protect society. So a negative one is that an international framework is useless just because it failed to enforce once in the Russian ASAT test, as she mentioned. Why should we give up on justice entirely? Just one failure does not justify a lawless sky. My first counter argument for today will go against opposition about safety. Safety is paramount and best ensured only by an international framework's oversight. Companies absolutely need an international framework's oversight for safe development. Let's look at OceanGate, a chilling reminder of what happens when private companies self-regulate. The CEO Stockton Rush proudly said, and I quote, "It's about picking the rules that you want to break to value innovation." He complained about the safety standards in the industry being, I quote again, obscenely safe, and argued that the sector hadn't grown or innovated precisely because of these rules. So what did his private company do? The private company broke those rules. They skipped the checks and avoided oversight from the framework. And in 2023, 5 people died when their submersible exploded on the dive for the Titanic. This was not a mishap, but a totally predictable outcome or consequence of what happens when an international framework is simply ignored. If billion-dollar tech CEOs can cut corners in the ocean, just imagine what they could pull off in space, where there are no borders. We need a framework not to stop innovation, but to stop another ocean gate and catastrophe from happening in space. My second counter argument is against unethical practices followed by private companies without an international framework. Without an international framework, reckless actions go unchecked. For example, in 2007, China blew up its own satellite in a military test. They created over 3,000 pieces of space debris, and now every space mission, be it Chinese or not, has to suffer. There was no cleanup, no apology, just silence. Why? Because no global body has the authority to hold them accountable. To avoid such malpractices, we need a good international framework and a good set of rules and judges. Now I will prove why we absolutely need an international framework to avoid scandals. Private companies will not magically behave better. Look no further than 2015 Volkswagen emission scandal. Volkswagen, a private company, rigged the software in their cars to cheat pollution tests, prioritizing profits over public health. Not only did they have to pay billions of dollars in fines after they were caught, but worst of all, they caused irreversible environmental destruction, just because there was no international framework. Just imagine the fraud they'd get away with a lawless space race. For my third counter-argument, negative 2 said that an international framework would not help universalization. But history says otherwise. In the 70s and 90s, global innovation stalled. As reported in International Telecommunication Union archives, telecom systems clashed, frequency signals interfered, and Cold War rivalries led to disputes over satellite slots and orbits. All because there were no shared rules. That changed when the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, stepped in. They laid a framework, standardized the frequency spectrum, and coordinated orbital rights with all the nations. The result, GPS, satellite, TV, and broadband were all made possible because of the international framework, because of the world was connected together and helped it grow together. The international framework supercharged both innovation and universalization. The evidence in my speech is made it crystal clear how a framework would aid universalization. I urge the judge to choose an international framework over a lawless void. I urge the judge to choose universalization over tyranny and monopolization. With this, I would like to end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Well, we'll begin the 2-minute prep time for both teams to prepare their summaries. It will start now. All right. Time is now up. Let's now hear from -4 for the 4-minute Chromium summary. You may begin when you're ready.
Okay, so as the first speaker for final speaker for negative, I urge you all to see why an international regulatory body for space minerals is not just impractical, but a risk to progress itself. Our first speaker laid the hard truth. International bodies are often slow, powerless, and profoundly outdated in the face of rapid technological advancements. Just look at the foundation of the Outer Space Treaty. It's a relic from over 50 years ago, created before the advent of commercial spaceflight that has no practical means of enforcement. When Russia conducted an anti-satellite missile test in 2021, it created thousands of dangerous debris fragments that threatened even the International Space Station. Yet no global authority could step in and act. That's not effective regulation. That's a glaring failure to protect the environment it claims to govern. Meanwhile, innovation is not waiting for international consensus. While diplomats deliberate, national governments and private companies like Carmen Plus and Astroforge are already leading asteroid mining missions. They are agile, they are fast, and they are willing to take the bold, calculated risks necessary to push humanity into this next frontier. In stark contrast, an international framework, by its very nation, is often stuck in bureaucratic quicksand, unable to adapt in the speed of scientific and commercial advancement. Our second point hit the core issue with undeniable precision. Major spacefaring nations will never sign truly binding international agreements that limit their future opportunities in space. History proves this without doubt. The Moon Agreement, designed to govern celestial body resources, was overwhelmingly rejected by major space powers like the United States, Russia, and China. Why? Because nations understood that the future of space is uncertain and filled with immense potential we can barely grasp. So no one wants to lock themselves into restrictive rules before they know the full scope of what's possible. Even more concerning, attempts at heavy-handed international regulation can actually foster distrust. Imagine a scenario where nations are forced to comply with overbearing rules, but then feel compelled to falsify economic or production data to hide their activity and protect their burgeoning interests. Instead of building the transparency and collaboration we so desperately need, this breeds suspicion, creates a black market in space, and ultimately divides us. The last thing space exploration, this grand human endeavor, needs is conflict born from overbearing regulation. So then what is the answer? We don't need ponderous, slow, or rigid international laws. We need something far more effective, voluntary cooperation. This cooperation should be built on transparency, mutual trust, and shared respect among nations. Nations can share data on their activities, coordinate their efforts to ensure safety, and agree on ethical and environmental best practices, all while maintaining the flexibility to adapt as technology and our knowledge of space evolve. National laws are far better suited for this challenge. They are flexible, realistic, and can respond quickly to new development in space mining. They can protect labor rights and the environment within their own jurisdiction without paralyzing innovation under endless international debates and elusive consensus seeking. In conclusion, let's not kill this incredible momentum of space exploration with outdated, rigid international regulation. Let's instead embrace a future of smart, flexible cooperation, one that trusts innovation, respects national autonomy, and encourages responsible exploration. This is how we truly universalize space, not by forcing every nation into a one-size-fits-all rules that ultimately no one will truly follow. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. All right then, and finally, we'll now hear from affirmative 4 from Team Titanium, who will begin their summary in the 4-minute allotment. You may start when you are ready.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, respected judges and fellow debaters. My name is Gauri, and I will be the fourth affirmative speaker. I will demonstrate that the affirmative team has a more compelling case to support the resolution. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. As our first speaker clearly stated, equity is a cornerstone of universalization, and only an international body can ensure fair and impartial access to space minerals. We gave examples like the Montreal Protocol and the World Health Organization, which demonstrates how international bodies can successfully allocate resources and support developing nations, proving that equity is achievable through collective action. Without such a framework, we stated that private companies and powerful nations will dominate, continuing inequalities and undermining universalization. Our second speaker emphasized the critical importance of safety and equal access. Unregulated space mining risks accidents, environmental damage, and even militarization of space, as highlighted by the United Nations. An international body can enforce uniform safety standards, preventing these dangers. Additionally, we gave examples like the UN Spider program exemplifies how international cooperation ensures that all nations benefit from space resources, countering the threat of colonization of a few powerful states. Now, coming to what the negative teams did. In their first argument, they talked about how an international body is right now based on the Outer Space Treaty and the Moon Agreement. But we countered that in our first speaker. We clearly stated that we propose for an international body which adapts to the new idea of universalization, where everybody would be given equal access and equal resources. Now, the negative team talked about national laws and how national laws would be better, but they never connected it to relation to universalization. During the cross examination, the negative team accepted the facts that they are not against regulation. We also gave examples like the Ocean Gate during our rebuttal with private companies which broke rules, which led to the death of people. Now, the most important thing at the end of the day is humans, and we need to ensure safety for humans. Therefore, we need regulations. The negative team prioritized innovation over regulation and stated that having an international body would slow down regulation. But the truth is, this same bureaucracy or the same thing that slows down ensures that decisions are made which for the safety of human beings and that every human life is saved. They also talked about the SpaceX and emphasized how the SpaceX has made several new projects like the Falcon 9 and so and so. But we gave examples and we clearly stated throughout this debate that the SpaceX is a NASA-funded organization and therefore it is based on regulations indirectly because the NASA is based on regulations. Therefore, we can see that innovation happens the best under regulation because even though they argued that bureaucracy slows things down, the truth is the more time it takes to make a decision, the better it turns out to be. They also talked about how they gave examples like the United Nations and as I said before, the Outer Space Treaty. But again, we talked about, and our first speaker clearly stated that we will not be following such corrupt mechanisms like the veto votes, and we would move on to an international body that again adapts to the ideas of universalization. They also talked about the nuclear warheads reduction. We emphasized how that was reduced by 70%, as well as the Montreal Protocol, which took the ozone depletion over by 99%. They talked about the best case scenarios, but we emphasize that an international body is essential. So every country, no matter it is even if a space-faring country or non-space-faring country, has an equal podium and equal opportunity. With this, I come to the conclusion of my speech. Throughout this speech, again, we highlighted that an international body is not preferable, but it's essential for equitable space and inclusive space mineral utilization. The scale of the universe demands cooperation, not competition. For these reasons, I urge you to vote for affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Congratulations and thank you, everyone. I would just like to mention that only the feedback from the judge will be provided, therefore, a winning team will not be announced in this session. Judge Badawi, would you like a couple minutes before providing your feedback?
Yes, please. I have to actually read through the papers.
Okay, all right then. I'll give you about 5 minutes. You can just let me know beforehand if you are ready before then.
I think I'm ready. It's just feedback, right?
Yes, it is just feedback for the session.
Okay.
All right
I
then.
don't know
Okay,
where to
so
start.
then
I don't know where to start. Okay.
whenever you are ready, you have like
No, no,
4 minutes.
it's not about readiness. It's about where to start because it's an entanglement of arguments, rebuttals, and back and forth questions. So I'm not
Indeed.
gonna start at the beginning, to be honest. I'm gonna
Whenever you
start
need
right at
to.
the middle with cos x. Okay. Should I begin?
Yeah, you can begin. I'll just reset the
Uh,
timer
no, no,
whenever you
no.
start.
Yeah, yeah. No, go on. 4 minutes. That's it.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm gonna say something now, and I'm going to repeat it later. I've had the unfortunate event of judging or coaching for a team who's not fully there. And therefore, I really applaud uh, the negative team's presence today, even with just two members. That's very, very brave. And regardless of the feedback and regardless of whatever the result will be, and I already have it to be honest, but I need you I think Alexandra and Paul, I need you both to be proud of having faced four very fierce players onto your own. Uh, I started paying attention to clash points in the cross examination. The first was, how is a framework, an international framework, better than a national one? The second clash point was that how it's going to be enforced. The third one was, is it ineffective or effective? What data do we have to support this, either from the affirmative side or the negative side? And fourth, and there are other clash points, but I'm speaking just so that I can fill the 4 minutes and stay to the limit. The final clash point for me was in the summary. And to be honest, it was the summary that tipped the balance. Until the very last moment, I was hearing nearly a balanced reasoning from both teams. Um, Team Titanium, you're really quick. I really had difficulty following you. I was trying to not break my rest. That's really, really good practice and really good preparation. But however, there was the question of how are you going to enforce this? And to be honest, for me, it was a fallacy, a logical fallacy. You used a circular reference analogy here. They did not point it out. The negative team, Team Chromium, did not point it out. But as a judge, I must tell you this. You did not clearly state how it's going to be enforced, not in the four speeches. You just said more regulation and more laws and stronger laws, etc. The second clash point was about who's um, there was this example of SpaceX being tossed back and forth. It was one actually in the summary that SpaceX is funded by NASA. That's for nowadays. But in the past, I'm not sure. I don't think they were originally funded by NASA. But as we speak, yes, they are funded. And there's a very political kerfuffle taking place as we speak. And I'm not going to go there, but just keep up with the news. And thirdly, was the fact that is it ineffective? This is what really, this is was like the core of the problem. A team is really strongly suggesting that an international body is the best solution. The other team is saying, okay, your solution is ineffective. It's useless. It's not going to work. So what won with this over was the overlapping examples. And that went for Team Titanium. Overall, I think that this was a very, very, very strong game. And again, I applaud the bravery of Team Chromium playing with 2 versus 4. But Team Titanium, you really well prepared. That's a very coordinated effort by the four of you. That's all I have for now for the feedback.
Thank you so very much. All right then. Well, thank you again, Judge Badawi. Judge, please remain on the Zoom after the debaters have left as well. The final virtual debate for the spUN tournament is scheduled to be streamed into the NSS International Space Development Conference, the ISDC, in Orlando, Florida on Saturday, June the 21st at 8:30 Pacific Daylight Time. This debate will be streamed out on NSS YouTube as well as NSS Facebook. We hope that you will all join us there. You will see an announcement at the ISDC competing teams soon after the last debate round, which will be on Saturday tomorrow, on the 8th of June. Also, please mark your calendars for Saturday, July 12th, 2025 at 8 a.m. CT for the spUN Program Awards event. We will be using the same Zoom link as today. I'll just quickly add it into the chat for all of you to keep for future reference. There it is. And then again, great and excellent job, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in the 2025 spUN Debate Tournament. Judge, please be sure again to remain in the breakout room as well after the debaters depart, but just
I
stay here
just
for a
think
few more
that you
minutes.
sent, yeah, I think you sent the message only to me, not to
Oh,
everyone.
only to you. My bad. Sorry. Let me just do that again. Has everyone received? Okay, great. Thank you again for all being patient with me. Again, Judge, just to remain in the meeting again after all the debaters leave. And yes, thank you again and congratulations. Goodbye, everyone.